Welcome to Friday Forum Live. We're back after a short break, broadcasting live and direct to you from Point Blank here in East London. Today I'm joined in the studio by producer, engineer and Point Blank tutor Anthony Chapman. Anthony is here to give us a bit of an insight into some of the concepts behind layering. So, Anthony is going to be giving us, as I say, a bit of an insight into some of the concepts behind layering, some of the techniques used to add depth and warmth and to kind of create thicker and wider sounds for your productions at home. We're going to see some of the techniques using, well, in Ableton Live and using a couple of different third-party plugins, that's right, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely.
So yeah, of course, as always, Friday Forum is your chance to get involved and ask questions as well. So for you guys watching at home, make sure you post up in the chat room any questions you've got, and myself and Anthony will try and get through them towards the end of the session. Just before we get into it, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what's been going on this week at Point Blank. So, first up, we've just teamed up with Armada Music, Google Plus and DJ Mag to launch the Academy of Electronic Music. It's a platform to give aspiring producers, you guys out there, the chance to get your tracks heard by some of your favourite artists, to get feedback from like-minded producers and DJs, and ultimately it's a chance to get your track signed by Armada Music. It's an amazing platform, so make sure you head over to Point Blank Plus, where you can find out all the details, everything on there that you need to know. Secondly, we're approaching our autumn term here at Point Blank London, and it's getting very full. All the classes are looking like, they're very close to filling up. So if you want to come and study with us here in London, it's pretty much your last chance right now. So head over to pointblanklondon.com or get in touch with one of the course advisors here, and they can talk you through everything you need to know, and we can get you signed up. Lastly, we have our full range of online classes getting underway this month in just a couple of weeks on September the 16th. So we have everything from production to the DJ classes as well, certificates. So make sure you head over to pointblankonline.net to check out all the classes, and again, get in touch with the course advisor if you need any more info. So yeah, that's enough from me. Anthony, talk us through a little bit about what you're going to be doing today.
Okay, no worries. Well, I've got this, this is a remix that I've done. It's a remix of a very old track. It's actually the 25th anniversary of this track being released originally. It's a track by Finney Tribe called Detestimony, which was like one of the original sort of Balearic tracks. Like in this era of the original Balearic tracks were basically tracks that weren't necessarily dance music. They were kind of like lots of rock and pop bands who had maybe slightly dubby mixes that were kind of around the 115, 120 BPM.
Okay.
So the original, there was this compilation that was, I think it was on FFFR, Big Tom's label, with the I on the front of it. And pretty much all of the tracks on it were kind of like oddities from sort of bands that weren't really known for dance music. And this is one, Finney Tribe from Scotland, and they were kind of like a John Peel type band, did a bit of electronics. And so they went on from this, kind of doubled up on dance music. But basically this whole track, the hook in this track is that this like bell sound. If we just give this a blast. It's like this, yeah. So this bell sample is like the hook of the original track. And anyone sort of my age or a little bit older who was clubbing in the sort of late 80s will probably remember this. This hook was like a massive track, So I've kind of, I've worked with the band in the past, and but as a sort of celebration of the anniversary of the release, they got a load of people to do different remixes. They're releasing some, but this is just something I'm going to put on my SoundCloud, which is going to be up for download. And in fact, I think it's the same day as the online courses.
Oh right, okay, cool.
So the reason I want to look at this is particularly the main bass line in this track. When I originally did it, I was trying to do it with one synth. I was trying to use this sub-boom bass, Rob Papen synth, which is, this is one thing about this today. I don't usually use massive. I'm a bit difficult like that because everybody else uses it. So I think, I kind of want to use something different because I don't want to sound like everybody else. Don't get me wrong, Massive is brilliant. It's an amazing synth. You can do incredible stuff with it. But I don't know, sometimes I'm a bit awkward and I just want to do something a little bit different. So I've got this synth sub boom bass from Rob Paffman. I don't know if you know. I'm sure a lot of the viewers will know a lot of his other synths like Predator and stuff like that. You know, I know a lot of the trance guys really like a lot of his synths. And but sub boom bass, as the name suggests, is kind of focused on bass. And the way he's kind of done that is just made sure that all of the waves that are in it are really focused on the bass end, and they really work well for the bass. It also has lots of percussion samples in it as well, cool. So you don't just have to use sort of synth waves. You can have like there's drums and stuff like there's like timpanis and all stuff like that. And I know I've brought tracks in here before on Friday Forum where I've used those kind of sounds where you mix up a saw wave with a sort of timpani or something like that, and it gives you a really interesting flavour. And you know the oscillators sound really good. It's fairly simple in terms of routing and modulation. It's not like Massive where you can do just anything you can think of. This is a bit more simple. Perhaps I'm a bit more of a simple guy, and that works better for me.
I think I am as well.
But so I just want to quickly just sort of have a look at exactly what I'm doing with this synth, okay? And when I first started making this remix, I tried lots of different things. I was trying to do kind of quite choppy bass lines, quite sort of lots of things with lots of movement. But in the end, what I actually settled on was something really, really simple. Was just, you know, just some simple kind of notes. Okay, and I'm sort of playing off the bell sample and really taking the melodically in a different direction. But what I want to look at is the quality of the sound, and then how I brought in something else to maybe fill a gap that I thought wasn't there, and then balance between the two to do a few different things. So if we just have a listen to this. So if we have a listen to this, what I've got going on here is it's like a relatively high sine wave. So it's not kind of doing, when you look at this and you see it's a saw and a sine, you would kind of expect it to be doing, you know, you'd expect the sine wave to be really low, and giving it the meat, and you would expect the saw to be a bit higher. But actually, the way the oscillators work in sub boom bass, I actually found that in this setup was better. So that's my sine wave there, and if so in that saw, there's a lot of sub as well. So again, this is how, with this plugin, this is how it's focused towards bass. So you've got a sawtooth, but it's a sawtooth that is very bassy as well. And it's just kind of, you know, don't get me wrong, you can use this for doing sort of lead lines and stuff like that. You can do it monophonically as well. But if you're doing bass, it works really nicely, okay? So already within sub boom bass, I've kind of got a layering thing going on, because this one, the sine wave, is 12 semitones up. If you can see that, when I hold the cursor over the semitone knob there, we can see in the display over here, that is 12 semitones up. So if I pull that back down to be like in unison, now that's super low, but it's not quite as rich because there's already plenty of bottom end happening in the saw. Okay, if I turn that one off. Okay, so I definitely prefer it up. There you go. Just gives it melodically a little bit more interest, you know. And so this is a bit of layering I've got going on within this one instrument. But sometimes it's good to be able to take it on even further and then layer between instruments, and there's a lot of different ways of handling this, okay? So if we have a look in my, my arrangement here, we have got, on the next track, so I've got this sound, which obviously is completely, you know, it's a totally different kind of sound. And if we go in and have a look, we can see what I'm using to do this is the Tau bassline plugin, and this is a free plugin, okay? So this is a totally free synth. Tau has an incredible array of plugins, lots and lots of free plugins. Some of them I use literally in every track that I do. Like, they're so good, you know. He's got like a very basic Juno emulator, and then lots of, you know, echoes, and of course there's a great auto filter, which is a bit like LFO Tool or something like that. And they've just started doing paid plugins. They've got 2 or 3 which you can pay for, there's one which is kind of like a much expanded version of the bassline. and it's really, really nice. And also, they're not very expensive either.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
you know, and I feel like I'm definitely going to get that because I kind of want to support them because I've used the plugins so much over the years, you know. So, as you can see, if you know your synths at all, you see what this is trying to do is emulate the SH-101. I'm not sure why they called it the bass line, because the bass line would give you the impression of the 303, but you can see from the controls, this is trying to present a mono synth in the same sort of mode as the Roland SH-101. And really what I've done here is I've tried to set up almost like the opposite sound to the other one. So if we just compare and contrast, you know, if we listen to this one, it's got a little bit of buzz in it, but it's mainly just fatness. It's just big fatness, okay? But this one, it's just a little raspy.
Yeah.
And on its own, it's a bit like, ooh, I don't know about that. But if we put them together, we start to like hear, oh, this is making a bit more sense. If we just listen to the bass and this higher register synth, they don't necessarily, you know, the higher register one sticks out quite a lot, but when we put it all in the track, this one just pokes through enough to give you that little bit of sort of higher register excitement, okay? I've got some other I've got some other craziness going on there as well. I'll come back to that in a minute. And if we have a look at the effects chain that I've got on the bass line, so if we just turn all of these off so we can hear. So that's the raw sound. It's incredibly simple, you know. It's just really just a kind of, is it a saw? Let's have a look. I don't remember which oscillator I used. I'm not sure, but it's, you know, it's got that raspiness. That's kind of what I wanted. But then going through the effects change step by step, I've like rolled off quite a lot of the bottom end and I've emphasised a bit of the top end. And if we look at the spectrum, if I pop the spectrum up, we can see there's certain areas where there's a lot going on. So I kind of want to capitalise on that, you know, because that's the stuff that I want to poke out in the mix. Then just a bit of compression, and this is a very fast bit of compression because I want to squash down that transient when it first plays so it doesn't poke out too much, but it also gives the impression of lengthening out the end. Because if you think about the shape of one of those hits on the synth, it's kind of like, you know, it goes up really quickly and then tails off straight away. But what I'm doing by compressing that transient really quickly is almost tilting it like that. So you get the transient gets squashed down, and when I add the gain at the end of I'm adding 5.5 dB of gain, the stuff that isn't compressed comes up. So you almost get this kind of tilting effect. And this is something I cover in the art of mixing course and also the online mixing dance music with Ableton Live course. With compression is my favourite bit, and this kind of really fits in with working with synths because you've got to know when to use a bit of quite fairly, well, it's not super extreme, but it's quite an extreme attack. It's like 0.3 milliseconds. You need to know when to use that because the temptation...
It can be a little bit daunting, I guess, as well, if you're not, you know, familiar with it.
Absolutely. Part of, I think, what is important when thinking about stuff like this, and I know when I do the masterclasses, is just getting people to listen. Because I know when I first started out, I was like, oh my God, wow. I mean, it wasn't with computers, but it was like, you know, hardware samplers and stuff like that. And it was just like, oh, I can do anything, wow, you know. And you find yourself, you're not really stopping and taking a moment to have a listen, you know. And stuff like this, I think, really helps that. And then just at the end of the chain here, I've got the Ableton Overdrive, only like 50% wet. It makes an incredible difference, you know. It's got some real mid-range kind of grunt, and then this, which is one of my favourite things at the moment, which is the Sound Toys little micro shift. This was a giveaway, the thing they gave away a few months ago, and it's basically just a very nice sort of spreader and thickener, modelled on the Eventide H3000, which is like a classic bit of studio hardware. Because they've done this, I'm going to guess there's going to be a paid version coming soon. That's normally what they do. They do the freebie, and then maybe 6 months, a year later, there's like a super version that you can get relatively
get you excited
cheap.
about it, and then
get
your credit card out.
First taste free.
That's right.
You know. So so if we listen to those together, we can hear that basically what I've kind of tried to do is two completely different things, but because I'm running them in tandem together. I've got ultimate kind of control. I can take it whatever way I want. I might find, I might do something like this in a mix and think, you know what, I don't need that other element.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it might be at the late stage of the mix, oh, it just needs a little bit more. And one of the main reasons, I think, for adding something like this buzzy one here, and also in the sub-boom bass, the higher register sine wave, is we need something so that we can give the listener an impression of bass, even if they're listening on a really small speaker.
Yeah, which is something that I've spoken to a few people about, definitely, about adding a little bit of distortion or something that you can feel, you can hear it even if you're listening to it, on small earbuds or on a laptop.
Because there's so much kind of like psychology in this. You almost have to give people the
like an outline of what's happening.
Yeah,
sort of thing,
and we fill in the gaps.
Yeah,
this is the thing.
yeah.
I mean, we all know if somebody sends you something, or there's a track you're downloading on your phone, and you have a quick little blast on the speaker. Oh yeah, and if you listen to it enough, you can actually, your brain will like fill in some of the gaps, and it will be listenable to you. I mean, if you look at it totally subjectively, you think, how could I listen to that? It's so tinny, but your brain will kind of fill in the gaps. And really, we need to give the listener, it's like almost like a little coded message saying, oh, there's a bass line, and we're telling you where the bass line is by giving you this one that's an octave higher and maybe overdriven with a bit of distortion or something like that. So, yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
I don't know if we've got any questions or anything coming in.
Let's refresh the page.
So,
Let's have a quick look here. We haven't yet,
okay,
no.
That's cool.
Yeah, guys watching at home, make sure you do, if you've got any questions, post up in the chat room,
Cool.
and I'll get them over to Anthony as we go.
No worries. Well, while we wait to see if anybody's got any burning questions, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly look in the mixer so we can see exactly what's going on with the main bass and that kind of buzzy bass as well. So there's various kind of ways you can approach this when you're using two different instruments to do the same thing over sort of like, a fair period of the track. And what I'm doing here is I've got so this one here, this is my sub-boom bass track here, okay, this one that's called main bass. And then this one here, the tail bass, this is the bass line, so this is like the kind of buzzy one. And what I've decided to do in this instance is tell the tail bass to receive MIDI from this track, okay?
Right.
So the MIDI on this track is playing sub-boom bass, but that same MIDI is also being received by the tail bassline track to play on that track, okay?
Yeah.
So if we have a look in
so you don't have to copy down the information.
I mean, there's some stuff here where I think this was an early stage of the process where I was kind of like working out what I was going to do, and then in the end, what I've done is I've recorded some automation separately on this track. So what's happening is the tail is getting the MIDI from the main bass track, but you can still have like completely separate automation going on. And then in this instance, what I've done to arrange it is, hang on a second, let's get my mixer automation up. Yeah, I've automated it using the speaker on, like the mute on the mixer.
So rather than arrange it, the traditional way, you've just let the MIDI run and then just switched it off.
Then I just switched it off. And this section in the middle here, I didn't want it to come in, so if we just so it's when it comes back in out after this breakdown. So I've just left it muted out there, and then when we get a bit further up here, and then it just comes back in there. So absolutely. So but the one thing you must remember is whenever you're using a MIDI track in live and it's receiving MIDI from somewhere else, if it doesn't have MIDI on the track, you've got to remember to have the monitor switched on for that track. So this essentially is basically telling it, whatever comes in to the track, I'm going to play out live. If you have it on auto, you're never going to hear it because it would only play the MIDI out if you were recording. Okay. So for stuff like this, you've always got to use that monitor in button. And also, for example, if you do like a drums bus or something like that on a separate track, you've always got to use that monitor in button. So that's that's a hurdle I know with a lot of students. When they start to get a bit more advanced and they want to start routing stuff like this, and this is a little hurdle that they hit because it's sometimes not made obvious
Yeah,
what the function of that is.
I guess unless someone points it out,
Yeah.
it isn't immediately obvious.
If you're recording audio with like a mic and stuff like that, it becomes quite obvious quickly. But then sometimes it's not obvious straight away that it also applies to MIDI as well. Let's just. I just wanted to sort of show you a couple of these other synth elements that I've got going on in here, because this. So we've got this track here, chords, okay, and for this track I'm using, again, this is me with my, you know, I always want to make life difficult, or you could say interesting for myself. But
let's say interesting.
well, you know, on the one hand, I like to be a bit different, and you know, like I said, I kind of try not to use massive in the way that everybody else uses, but then also another thing I certainly with my students I'm well known for is I like a bargain. I like a nice bargain.
Yeah. Well, the towel stuff.
Well, exactly. You know, how better a bargain can you get for free? But I always love to keep an eye out on. There's a few blogs that I keep an eye out on for when there's plugins, there's special offers. And this FabFilter 1 synth, I think I paid £5
really?
for this. Yeah, they had a special offer on, and I just like the look of it. So basically, it's kind of modelled on anyone who's used like a classic sort of Korg. MS-10 or MS-20, obviously there's a reissue of the MS-20 out now.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll recognise a lot of these controls. This is essentially based on that synth, okay? The difference with this is that it can do polyphonic as well. Okay. So the MS-10 and the MS-20 can only do monophonic, but this can do polyphonic. And I just love the simplicity of it. It's such a simple synth, and you can really work it hard and get some good results. You know, it's got the envelope generator in it, which you can use to modulate the pulse width, the cutoff, the volume as well. And so in this track, I've used it to do some sort of like quite rhythmic chords, quite sort of parping, sort of raspy kind of chords. Okay, and if we have a look here. Okay, so if we have a look at the sort of effects chain that I've got going on, it's a little bit, it's a fairly long one. Yeah. We've got our EQ here, okay, so I've rolled off quite a bit at the bottom end. I've got like I identified this frequency here, let's put it up on the spectrum. I identified this frequency here in the low mid as being something that was quite crowded in the mix. So I've kind of cut it down a bit there just to make a bit of room for everything else. And then I've brightened it up a little bit at the end. I've got my regular compressor, and you know, I'm just kind of using that to keep it under control. Good old little micro shift again for some stereo spreading. Then I've got my sidechain compression. So you can see that's being sidechained off. I've got a ghost kick in there. Okay, let's fold down this spectrum and just get back to. Okay, so my sidechain compression is kind of last in the chain in terms of like all my effects that have got to do with the dynamics and stuff like that. And this is something that, you know, with synths is always important for students. Is obviously with modern dance music, lots of people, they want to layer up their synth and then they want to get that sidechain sound, that really obvious sidechain sound. Yeah,
that kind of pumping,
Yeah, and I do get asked a lot. It's usually, you know, when I do the online courses, one of the first things I get asked is, where should I put the sidechain compressor? And I will say, at the end. Because, you know, you want to shape your sound first, get the sound how you want it, then you do the sidechain. Yeah. Because if you do a sidechain compressor first and then put a normal compressor afterwards, in theory, the normal compressor is going to compress out the sidechain. It's going to try to compensate for that. So, but here, I've sort of broken one of my carnal rules, which is I almost always have reverb and delay on send and returns. But it just seemed to work. With this delay actually on the channel, you know.
Okay, it's not something I ever do actually.
No, well, I always use send and return for reverb and delay, but I just don't know, for some reason I was just feeling it, you know. It's, you know, if any of my students that I teach are seeing this, they're probably like, they're going to give me hell next week. So, and then on this, I actually did a bit of layering as well, because, well, actually the synth is a layer, is like a second layer for stuff that I've got going on up here. If we can, let's get to this. So have a listen. So it's the good old Live 9 strings, orchestral strings that come with Live Suite, which I think are fabulous. They're really good. If you're like me, you're not looking for something to do Hollywood movie scores. You just want some really good string sounds. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. You know, they're so nice. They really work with like kind of grime type.
I think we talked about that before.
They're really, really nice. You know, and so I've got 2 tracks of them. I've got the main one is on this this sort of yellow track here. Then we've got. Then I just added like a little pad for the breakdown. But if we loop up these ones here, you can see. So basically what I've done there is I've just tried to like take that melody that I'm doing on the strings and give it this synthetic edge as well. You know, and in the mix, because they're both on separate channels, I can just completely like decide, you know, whatever mood I think suits the track. A bit more organic or a bit more electronic. There's one other thing as well with this FabFilter synth that I'll come clean. It was totally by accident, and it just sounds so nice. Okay. And that's to do with the automation that I was using. Okay, if we open up the automation for the FabFilter synth, you see I've modulated the cutoff at various points. But this one, the sustain on the envelope. Okay, so this was an accident. I was drawing some automation in, and I thought it was on something else, and I drew it on the sustain. And it came out really nicely. If you watch the envelope here, you'll hear what it does when it gets to it. It just does some weird things where it like, you know, depending on what level you put it on, it can either sound like the notes are just quietly carrying on, or they're loudly carrying on, or sometimes you can even
sort
like
of gliding up or something.
Exactly, it gives you that gliding up. So I was like, you know, so I'm here to come clean. Like a lot of other people would go, like, I knew exactly what I was doing. Check out my amazing automation. I was completely.
I bet you didn't know you could do this.
Exactly. But honestly, you know, but yeah. So in terms of layering, you know, with those 2 elements in particular, the bass, I think it was just really important to sort of differentiate between that big sub-boom bass sound, which I really love. You know, if any of you watching this are thinking you need a little bit of, I don't know, you're feeling a little bit jaded about Massive and stuff like that, give it a go. Get the demo and give it a go. It's a strange synth. It's totally different to Massive because it's not a great big sound design monster. But it can just, there's some great presets in it. One thing I've not looked at, this would, to be honest, this could probably be like a Friday Forum all of its own, but is the sequencer in it, okay? Oops. Which is sort of hidden away in here. Okay, and with this is like an old school kind of like analog style sequencer. So you can actually record little step sequences. So you just hit one key and it will play this sequence. But it's all got, you know, you can make it slide a bit like a 303 and stuff like that. So you can do some pretty crazy stuff with it. And it's also got some very nice effects built into it as well. So with this one, I'm just using the effects when I'm using the ensemble just to spread it out a little bit. You know, it's honestly, for a bit of different flavour, and I don't think it's very expensive. I think it's under £100. So you know, so I definitely recommend people check it out for a bit of inspiration. Yeah,
definitely. We've actually got a few questions in for you, Anthony. The first one, I have to shout out Bass Banger, who said that the bells in the track remind him of Steps' Tragedy.
That was what I was going for, of course. Or we could say Finny Tribe were, they were responsible for, but maybe they secretly. I mean, wasn't Steps' Tragedy, was that Stock Aitken Waterman? I think was that one of their later things. I'm sure Pete Waterman was involved with it. Maybe secretly Finny Tribe were like, you know, on the slide producing these tracks, not telling anybody.
Oh, I'd love to think so. So we've got a question from Diego, who's asked. How do I compress the bass and the kick in the same group so they sound strong? I guess that's kind of sidechaining slightly.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, so let's have a look here because it's very probable. Yeah, so I've got some stuff here. And you remember what I was saying about me breaking my cardinal rule? Look what's here on the bass track. Sidechain compressor, before
Brilliant.
an EQ and a glue. I can't defend myself. It probably just sounded good at the time and I went for it.
That's the way to do it, though, isn't it?
But this is the thing. I always say to students, you know, it's not rules. There are no rules in mixing. I can just show you different ways of using gear and plugins and techniques and stuff like that. And, you know, I always say it's best, you know, there's best practice. I kind of hate using that kind of sort of business speak, but it's best practice. You know, best practice would be to have that at the end. But then again, sometimes it doesn't.
And also, from what you said earlier, you know, just sticking to the rules isn't really the way to do it. You know, open your ears, you know, reference, listen to it, and when it sounds, but if it does sound better the other way, you know, go for that. Obviously. Yeah.
So Diego, what we're looking at here is basically. So this is basically how I would handle it. And it's how I do it every day. It doesn't matter whether I'm doing dance music. Like the last 3 days, I've been recording crazy rock music, like this band Tim Benson, and I did exactly the same technique when I was mixing this yesterday, which is bass and the bass drum obviously share lots of the same frequencies. So you know, around 60 to 100 hertz. There's loads and loads of stuff going on there, and a lot of the time, the bass and the kick drum are going to hit on the same note. So we need to work out some way of getting them to live together. And there's a couple of different things we can do. One that we can do is we can EQ sort of sympathetically. So on my bass sound here, you know, we've got quite a big boost around, what's this, about 77 hertz. So it's just under 80 hertz. This is the bass line, you know. So if I took that and went to my kick drum, now, in my track, it's a little bit more complicated because there's actually a few different levels of drums going on. Okay, but if we had a look in my drum rack with my 909 in it, you know, then I could go into this, and if I went into the EQ, I could sort of scoop out a chunk here. Yeah. Okay, so if I like kind of scooped out, you know, around sort of 77 hertz, that might help the situation. But I actually prefer to do the sidechain because I kind of I want to create the sound of each one to be the best that it can be. But then having the sidechain just means that every time the kick drum plays, the bass just gets pushed down momentarily, just a little bit, and it's almost like this This is it's always how I explain it to students. It's this seesaw effect of the kick drum is that end of the seesaw, and the bass is that end of the seesaw. And it's always going to be kind of like one or the other, you know. But we're not talking about huge amounts. We're just talking about little, you know, few dB kind of cuts, just to give them their own space. And I like, and I kind of like introducing a bit of movement with the sidechain. So if we just look at the bass here, let's have a look. So let's actually listen to it here. Just got to find it. It's quite a big session.
It is, yeah.
So you can see here, just got a little, it's not a huge amount. If we look at the larger thing here, it's only about 2 dB, okay? But if I pull the threshold down, we'll be able to hear it more.
Yeah, you can really hear it then.
You know? And I kind of like a bit of that movement.
Yeah.
You know, definitely. I really do. So then if I solo as well, the kick drum. So to me, that's, you know, that really helps it.
I think the one thing that we've talked about in the past as well is you know, the choice of sound, you know, the choice of your kick drum and the sound of the bass line, really. You know, to save yourself so much work, you know, kind of as much as possible, see what you can do on the choice, really.
Exactly, yeah, no, absolutely. And that's partly, you know, why I went for this kind of bass sound, because, you know, that sub-boom bass has got, you know, there's a bit of buzz there. There's enough there to give it a bit of lushness, but the bass is really smooth.
And the kick drum's not some, you know, huge subby,
it's just a 909. Exactly. Yeah, it's just a 909. And the other thing I would say as well to Diogo is try not to over-compress the kick drum, like on its own. This is, you know, one of my great sort of hobby horses is like trying to sort of encourage students to lay off the compression on single drum sounds like kicks or snares when it's a sample, because it's the same sound every time. And they go, oh yeah, whack the compressor on and it's doing loads of compression, and I'm just like, all you're doing is squashing all of the life out of it. What you're better off doing is taking all of your drums or a group of your drums, then compressing those and shaping it a bit more subtly, you know, because often I find people will like really compress the kick drum, and then they can squash all the life out of it. Then afterwards, they add loads of bass.
Yeah.
But I mean, the top
right,
end, it's like, well, you know, you didn't need to do
Yeah,
that.
most definitely.
So I hope that was useful for you, Diogo. Okay?
I think so, yeah. Let's have a look. So we've also got a question from Just to Get a Rep, who's a regular viewer, actually, who said, I noticed that you didn't group the two instruments in one track. Was there a reason for that? Or is there another way of doing the same thing?
Just to Get a Rep, that's a Gangstar reference, I assume. Yeah, well, you know, that is definitely something that I do quite a lot, and I do quite like the functionality of groups in live, because it's really simple. It's just really, really, you know, it's so easy, like literally, so we could just take these two tracks here and then Command and G, and it groups them together like that, okay? So now, if I fold that up, we've got the one fader, so this is what Just to Get Rep's talking about. We've got the one fader here to control the level, okay? But what's really great about it is now that they're in there, we can process them together as well. So this is what I would do, like I was saying with the drums, avoiding the compression on the individual channels and trying to concentrate on the drums as a whole, or groups of the drums. So here, now I've got this, what I might start doing is, let's see, get the glue. It's always like to use the glue whenever possible. And just do like, you know, because I've shaped all my sounds completely, I just use the glue on like fairly slow settings here. Okay, just to kind of knit them together. And then maybe, you know, who knows, like I might also think, oh, I need to just tweak the EQ a little bit. So I might, maybe I'll need to like, you know, maybe it needs a bit of air, which sometimes will happen, you know. So this is what we're talking about. And this is a totally, you know, this is totally valid, and I do it a lot. And why I didn't do it on this one, to be honest, I'm not really sure. But I just think they were functioning quite well separately.
I guess if it's not a necessity.
Yeah,
you know.
I think this is partly a sort of symptom of the way we make and mix dance music as well, because, you know, in the paradigm of like, you know, pop and rock bands in the studio of the past, you had the very obvious recording phase and the very obvious mixing phase, you know, and sometimes it would be on different days, might even be in different studios, and you would always like reset the desk and kind of start from scratch. But when we're writing and mixing in the same software, sometimes it's not really as easy to do that, because a lot of the time the little mixing things you do with the EQ and stuff like that are part of the writing process.
Yeah, most definitely.
And I think this is probably what was probably, you know, this was my thought process here. Because particularly, because I did all of this, if we go and have a look, we did all of this automation on the Tau bass line, if we look here. So I'm modulating the cutoff there. It's great, it does a really good squelch, that synth. Really, really nice. So, but the overdrive and the little micros especially really helped that. So it's fantastic. So in terms of why I didn't do it, don't know, but it's a completely valid like thing to do, and it's great. It's a great feature of live.
Definitely.
And Logic X has kind of nicked it, but with track stacks,
that's right.
It's very similar. Very similar.
Cool. Ollie Gardner has asked, how do you layer a synth to make it pop but still keep that low end, not going up semitones? So I guess we kind of.
Yeah, well, that's kind of. I guess really that's kind of what I've been trying to do here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it really is. If we compare these two, I mean, it's so. The way I think about it is, we want, you know, in the bass line, we want it to be warm and bassy, and we might want it to be quite sort of growly and maybe even percussive at the top. So expecting to be able to do that in one instrument is a bit of a big ask. Obviously, if you were using something like, if you weren't using a synth, if you were using like Contact or something like that, you could totally do it. But if you're using synths, I think a lot of the time it's good to give yourself that full flexibility by either using two instances of the same synth, or do what I did here, where I've got a separate synth altogether, being triggered by the same MIDI. So.
Do you have any rules about, you know, about certain sounds working with one another or anything? Is there anything to go by?
Oh, it's mainly by ear, to be honest. I know some of my mixing and dance music with Able Live students, in this course I'm doing at the moment, I think they just, at the first, they just thought I was crazy because they'd ask me all these really technical questions and I'd say, you just got to listen to it. Does it sound good, you know?
Yeah.
But in terms of, I mean, I like, there is one rule that I generally tend to have in the back of my head, which is the more complex a sound is, and when I say complex, what I'm talking about is lots of different timbres. To bring such a highfalutin word into it. But so if we look at this, I've kind of got 3 timbres going on here, okay? So if we go back into my sub-boom bass, okay? So I've got the sine wave, but quite fairly high register sine wave. And then I've got the saw, which is bassy but growly as well. So you could almost say 4, you know? And then we've got the tail bass line, which is much higher, you know, it's a much sort of faster wave. And the way I look at it is, the more complex the sound is in terms of all those different aspects of the sound, the more room you're going to need for it. You know? And I mean, this track's fairly busy, you know, because it's not like, it's got a 4-to-the-floor kick drum, but it's got all those kind of off-beat snares and everything. And it's fairly busy. So in a way, I think that's why I had to work it so hard. And, you know, it's a track like this is never going to sound as spacious and epic as a great big sort of progressive house track. But, you know, I think if you work on those separate sounds, you can get good results. But generally speaking, there's something to bear in mind. If you've got very harmonically and tonally rich sounds, you're going to need a lot more space.
Yeah,
you're going to need a lot more
most
space,
definitely.
So.
So Mr. Athori has asked about the strings that you were talking about, the string plugin.
Slightly awkwardly, the track is frozen. Let's see. Hopefully I'll be able to...
So there were the Ableton strings.
It's just the ones that come with Suite. Yeah, these are new. These are the ones that come with 9. If we... let me unfreeze this. Here we go. Yep. So this is it basically. So there's not a very exciting interface to look at, but it's just this is one of the presets that comes with Suite. I don't think you get it with Live, although I could be wrong. Because I know with Suite you get a much bigger library, about 50 gig worth. But they do. I mean, you know. They're really nice, you know. This is this like staccato strings. This ensemble says like loads, you know, really nice. But if we have a look in the library, let's have a look. Instruments. I think it's in the instrument rack. Orchestral. Where is it? Oh, they're in here. They're in here somewhere. Yeah. This is the problem with the Suite library. It's difficult to find everything.
Yeah.
So but anyway, but they are just the live strings. So if you're not using Live already, Live 9, you want to check to see whether they actually you get them with Live or just
standard
Suite.
version of the Suite.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's about all the questions we've got, and we're kind of approaching time anyway, I think. So yeah, I mean, you know, a massive thank you, Anthony, for coming down as always.
Thank you for having me. Thank you everybody for watching and commenting.
Yeah, and you guys watching at home, if you do have any more questions, you know, feel free to post up in the chat room. You know, we will go through them. Also, this whole session is going to be archived pretty much straight away as well. So, you know, within the hour, you can go back, watch it all. I know we've gone through quite a lot, so you know, if you guys catch up.
If anybody's still got any questions, you know, or if you're watching this in the future, put a question in the comments, and I keep an eye on them. I do tend to pop in and do answers.
Cool.
So,
yeah, so there we go. That's another edition of Friday Forum, and we'll be back next Friday, same time, 4 o'clock. Until then, keep locked to the Facebook, the blog, and the Point Blank London and Point Blank online sites. And we'll see you very soon. Thanks for watching.